Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to Asian Vision Dialogue. Today, I welcome back my dear friend Vathana. He is a senior student, a fresh graduate
Yep.
of IISPP. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Yes. However, today I want to invite you to on this episode to talk about one of the hottest issue right now, especially regarding the ends of July, which
Yes.
is the recent escalation of tension in the Middle East, especially regarding the assassination of the head of Hamas political bureau. So, without further ado, let's get right into it. But before we basically jump right into the incident, I want you to give us some broader context of what kind of event, historical event, that have come to shape the current tension in the Middle East.
Well, how far do you wish to go into this rabbit hole? Well, let's just say that the Middle East has a very conflicting history
Yeah,
upon their existence, if you will. Of course, not wanting, but circumstances had led to such unfortunate conflicts.
yep,
One of the first things I would say that leads to the modern day conflicts that we see today is probably would start at the fall or the impact of the Ottoman Empire, specifically during the First World War.
yeah,
In a way, we can also categorize it as one of the first genocides, categorically, if you
Okay.
will, where it shows similar characteristics of genocide, where the downfall of these people of the Ottoman Empire had transpired during the First World War, which had led to different conflicts, and the downfall of this particular people had led to I guess a domino effect
Yeah,
that went all across the region and had led to some level of other different conflicts and scenarios which transpired to what we know today exists.
yes,
Other things would be probably most probably is the I guess the creation of the state we know as Israel
mm-hmm.
with the Second World War.
Yeah,
After the horrifying incident of the Holocaust
Yeah, Holocaust.
and creation of Auschwitz, for example.
Yes,
This had, if you consider the age of where it existed
yeah,
in that specific time frame,
mm-hmm.
none had ever came close to such a devastating effect to a group of people.
Yeah,
So devastating and cruel,
yes,
where these people are demonized and be treated so inhumanely as almost animals, for
yeah,
example, where they're tortured or killed in such mass numbers, where they, of course, out of fear for their own life and seeking protection, of course, you would require safe haven, and by doing so, creating, of course, the state of Israel, which had different complications on its own.
yes,
Later on, which of course leads to what we now currently have,
yeah,
where during the year last year, where the attack on Israel
okay,
by
from
the
Hamas.
where about 1,000 or so of people had killed during this incident,
Yes,
which had other provocations in the past, where it recalls to way back historically, where
old wound.
yes, where the differences of ideologies between and beliefs with Christianity, for example, with the Crusades and with the Muslims being neighbors. There's a lot of historical events where these two have collided,
Yeah,
and these historical events that has been rooted in these times had continues on towards time and into modern era, and led to disagreements between these two countries, and just the region in general, where religion had played a huge roles in conflict where
Yeah.
had transpired to political, for example.
Yes.
And then, yeah, we could clearly see that history have written itself into the conflict itself. Of course, again, this is not wanting, but
Yeah.
out of pure circumstances at the time
Yes.
that people wish not to exist, but well, here we are.
Yeah.
And yeah, historically, it really embedded so much to these events that had transpired to what we know as these conflicts that exist today.
Yes, thank you so much. If I were to add a little bit to your
Yes.
for example, the explanation of how do we get here,
Yeah.
that's the main question that we have. Of course, we need to discuss before we get into the reasons. It's the 6 Day War between Israel and a coalition of the Arab states such as Egypt
Yes.
and Jordan, for example. Those are the catalysts that create the tension between the Arab states, such as Arab state, and of course the other regional power, that set the sea itself as a major power in the Middle East, such as Iran, and of course the recently assassination of the head of the Hamas in, I believe, on July 31st
Yeah.
of 2024. Of course, the assassination by rocket strikes in Iran will cause a real reaction
Yes.
between from Iran's to Israel. So essentially, like almost all the historical tensions, historical relations with multiple moving factors, religions, politics, all of it are combined into a very complicated and deeply rooted, like protracted conflicts.
Yes.
Between all the different states and all the strange relation, and not to mention the Arab Spring, for example.
Yes.
So all of this has created a very connected and very conflicted hysterical events.
Yes.
All of it has led to the Middle East that we know today.
Yeah.
So now that we get the context a little bit,
Yes.
so let's move on to a very like the main topic of this discussion, this the episode in general, which is the recent tensions.
Yes.
So the assassination of the head of the Hamas political bureau. So it happened in Iran. So I want to ask you, like, what are the reactions of other, for example, like the major players in the world to these assassinations?
So regionally, we'll talk about it scope by scope. For regional aspects, there are different countries in the region that has condemned such actions.
Yes.
Where countries like Qatar, for example, or Iran
Yes.
themselves,
Yes.
since the fact that had happened in their doorstep.
Yes.
Of course. So such actions were completely condemned by them, where it had simply, in simpler terms, just awful.
Yes.
To have happened. Where, so for Iran, in the perspective of Iran specifically,
Yes.
such event would definitely and is certainly quite the conundrum for them, where they, in a way, wouldn't not have expected, and that such things had to happen. So
yeah.
And other countries within the region had also condemned them as well.
Yes. So just
Condemned
Turkey,
such act. Yes, where countries like Turkey or Qatar had
Iran.
very verbally expressed themselves that such actions should not have happened and should not have transpired, and condemned the Hamas assassination.
Yes.
If you will. So,
Just okay. So what about the U.S., China, and Russia, for example, or in the EU?
For Russia and China, since they are quite verbally expressive,
Yes.
to such an event to happen,
Yes.
while the U.S. would be in a lesser state. I wouldn't say that they do not care, but they are hoping to have a more, I guess, a loosely way to say peaceful
Yeah,
by
as
having a ceasefire
yes,
where they do not deliberately condemn such actions, but hoping to have a room of balance in between the two chaos,
yeah,
where there could be a ceasefire and talks
de-escalation.
yes, de-escalation to have a level of like rational conversation and dialogue instead, while Russia and China and also the EU as well had fully condemned such actions, rightfully so, where the events of this assassination had led to, since in rational form, which is of course in no other way to describe it as simply just an horrendous act.
Yes, I wouldn't say that the EU is truly verbally like especially condemned, but it's just that they focus on de-escalation. That's the only well, if you read it like that.
Yeah.
But from my point of view, I think they want to focus on de-escalation. And regarding Israel point of view, I think some far right group would see this action as a necessary step to basically like completely remove the Hamas in general. So now that we somewhat paint a picture, both on historical and the reaction, let's get into like the real discussion.
Yes.
So how do you think that Iran has fully expressively said that it will retaliate? It will essentially say that this vow of retaliation back to Israel. Do you think that this increased tension, how will it affect the international community?
Well, for such comments
Yes.
to have been made, I think it should not be taken lightly. That's for sure.
Yes.
Where with, as we mentioned before, where the region itself is embedded with historical events that had conflict.
Yes.
This could lead to quite a concern when it comes to, I guess, the global prospects, where things might escalate quite intensely.
Yes.
So for things to have taken lightly, it might not be the best choice to make.
Yes.
So what, as the international's prospects, there should be talks and solutions to find a way to find balance in all the chaos, to seek for any resolutions or solutions to be able to figure out something. I wouldn't say be able to fix, because we know clearly based on these events, based on different times, that it is not as easily be mended. So the best there is for the region is to have some level of understanding, some level of respect, if you will, to try and find the middle ground, to seek for any peaceful solutions.
Yeah, because all this discussion regarding like the Middle East, like the region that quite, to be honest, like quite far away from us.
Yes.
So the frequently asked question of why should we care, right? Why should we care? But so from my point of view as well, I think like the reason we should care, or the reason like what my answer, my question is that what is the impact, right?
Yes.
So I think like of course like the oil market and any tension in the any region, people often we as in the people of the world and other region typically forget that there are people, innocent people involved. So like the idea of knowing, or the idea like we are here talking, we are here living peacefully while other is dying and involving in horrendous and disastrous life-altering events. Also, all of these are quite a major concern, especially like not only that we have war in Ukraine, in Europe right now, there a potential large-scale conflict happen in the Middle East as well. So more and more it become painted a picture of destabilize
Yeah,
the
I
entire
totally
world.
agree with you. Where in a lot of times, we, despite the Middle East comparing to our country is far further away, but we also, as you mentioned, we should just simply acknowledge the loss of life
Yes,
and
the
the
loss of
protection
life
of
and the
life
protection.
to
Yes,
be more important than just simply they are just
other
not our people,
people.
or
Yeah,
they're just people from other countries that
yes,
are but we should not be oblivious to these events where conflict has now been a huge topic
yeah,
globally in general, where
yeah,
different regions of the world are now having conflicts and the loss of lives are increasing by the day.
of course. Yeah.
So where when these conflicts happen, it's more of an obligation for all to support the protection of life,
Yeah,
and so peaceful prospect should always be the implications.
yes,
Where while there are times that we believe that we could not
yes,
able to do anything, but to acknowledge that is already a first step to seeking better solutions, to acknowledge that yes, this conflicts that is currently transpiring and causing the lives of innocent people is definitely an issue that is needed attention for, regardless of whatever ethnicity that you may be.
yes. I totally agree with that. Regardless of what, I mean, who we are, we
Yes.
still should care about other human beings.
Yes.
So, talking about all conflicts,
Yes.
right now we can clearly say that in Europe there's a war.
Yes.
In the Middle East there's a potential war. Are we heading toward World War III, or what's your opinion?
Well, I from where I see it,
Yes.
it's a yes and a no. When it comes to
Mm.
yes, I would argue that when it comes to these regions, what we can clearly see,
Yes.
it's there's a lot of influence of certain actors
Okay.
in this game of conflicts
Yes.
that they have. It's clear that they have a specific interest
Yes.
that they're seeking for. It's planned.
Yes.
It's organized with an objective in mind. So for it to happen, it is possible. The possibility is still there. Where if as we mentioned when discussed earlier, there are other actors who are involved, who are major powers that allow it to happen. For
Yes.
example, the US, Russia, and China, who has a play in this. So for a potential World War III to happen, it would mean that these parties see interest in these conflicts in some sort of way.
Yeah. Okay.
So they capitalize on the
Yes.
interest that they deem to gain
Yes.
by participation in war between each other. So major powers would take sides, if you will, on one party and then escalate their own interests and colliding with other countries' interests, colliding with each other and creating what a potential World War III would be.
Yeah.
If we're taking a look at a positive side where none would happen, is purely just how much would they weigh themselves to be, where how much would they risk just to have this ambiguous interest that I would guess calculate or predict for how much of this mysterious interest of whatever that they're seeking would cause them to lead to war, where in my views and from how I perceive it, it's too much of a price to be paid to seek such interest. So for that reason alone, that would be the argument where a potential war, a world war, to happen again would not transpire. If if we remember, if we take a look back and the lessons of history, especially with World War I and II, we can clearly see a similarities in those two wars where institutions, for example, is a big role from how I see it. Back then, institutions were not as cleanly and as finalized as we see today, where norms, institutions, and laws, for example, have now been embedded and implemented since the end of the Second World War, where these laws have now been in effect for so many years and had protected lives of the people to not experience such catastrophic bloodshed to allow it to happen ever again. So that is my possibility when it comes to arguing that there won't be. But all in all, regardless of the possibility of not having one or having one, the best thing is to be cautious. Never allow these things to lead to another. At the end of the day, as we just mentioned before, lives of the people will always be the most important.
Of course.
So for the region, I think it will always be going back to peaceful solutions in some sort of way. But of course, it's always easier said than done.
Of course. I totally agree with that analysis. I mean, when you see like the word here, World War III, it's a big word, right?
Of course.
It's a big word because you implying that the world will go into war with each other, right? So it's if you were to ask me, like about 5 years ago, I think, what are you talking about? Okay, what are you talking? We are not that. For example, we are not in that age where such a war happened anymore. But right now we see.
Yes, that's where I talk about the probability of there could be. Remember, as you mentioned, only 5 years in comparison, where things could happen immediately. Where we're so used to a peaceful life where these countries are not doing anything essentially. And suddenly in a few years, things just escalated to events that we could had never imagined in such a short period of time. So that is where people should simply be cautious about the possibilities of war. Even if there is reasonings that it could not transpire, cautious and being aware of situations and stances of other countries in certain conflicts. Of course, for example, this one that we are talking about, especially with the Middle East, we can clearly tell that there is a lot weighing over this conflict. One, of course, being historically implemented. And two, the interest that bigger countries play, where we can clearly see that they have interest in it, and they would believe that by allowing themselves into this space in this region would lead to them gaining some sort of benefits in some sort of way for their own country. So many possibilities are there, allowing this situation in the region to be heavily complex, not easily be observed to such a way that we can see it clearly in black and white. So there's a lot of colors in this palette. So yes, it's simply just a lot of things that concluded into this one region.
Thank you so much for your basically like analysis and laying out like the possibility of using right now we're using the word World War III. I don't mean to be exaggerated, and I don't mean to cause like panic or anxiety, but it is like you said, it's a possibility because there are so many essentially like region that conflict can happen, like most of the place around the world. So sadly our time has come to an end. Thank you so much for your basically being here to discuss about like the possibility of like big topic, right, of World War III. However, I think it is an important thing to discuss, regardless of for example, like even if we are were to wrong, it is still good that we choose this topic to discuss. And if it were really to happen, what would we do? For example, like resilient discussion is need to happen in any possibility. So thank you for being here. Thank you everyone for essentially like joining us in this discussion of the recent tension in the Middle East, and hopefully we can see each other in another episode. Thank you.